Hi, I'm Mario Evon, and you're listening to Talk Truth, a weekly edutainment podcast discussing the things that most people are afraid to, but from a Jamaican perspective. From relationships, sex and sexuality, to the ins and outs of entrepreneurship, in this space we speak about almost anything with the intention to inspire, educate, entertain, and create a fair and balanced space where your truth shall become your power and set you free. Yo, my family, Wagwan. Welcome to episode number 35 of Talk Truth. You don't know already, it is your boy Mario Evan. We have 5 more episodes to go for this season, and it's been an interesting time for me because as much as I love to be here, as you know, there is a part of me that's also craving for the break, if you want me to be honest. And that's interesting because the connections I have on this show are amazing, but I kind of feel like I want a break in the quiet. I feel like a lot of people are getting a lot more time to reflect in the pandemic, while I've just been hustling and grinding just the same. So I look forward to taking that break again to, of course, come back and bring back wonderful things for you in season 3. But hopefully it's still quiet when I take my break so that I can reflect a bit more. But today's episode is an interesting one, and I am happy I had the honor to have Fabian Thomas be my guest. And he is a Jamaican man, but he wears many hats. And he's going to tell us everything that he does, but he is a multi-potentialite as well, ranging from a creative to so many other things. And we speak about masculinity, you know, a topic that I feel many have discussed, but as well, many sweep underneath the rug. And especially in the context of being black and being from the Caribbean, there are also other specific and really unique dynamics to being a male and the element or quality of masculinity that many of us men feel tied to and tied to living up to. And we have a pretty candid discussion about that. So stay tuned, listen to Fabian and I go through the punches and talk about so many different aspects of masculinity. It was a really, really cool conversation, guys. Again, I thank you for the support. You know, I want you to subscribe to this podcast on your whatever you're listening to it on, but preferably on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen, and share it with friends. A lot of the success of the podcast depends on you really enjoying it and taking screenshots and reposting it. And, you know, if it really does connect with you, leave a comment. Tell somebody about it. Share the link. It really matters. And I appreciate it every time you do it. So let's talk about masculinity with Fabian Thomas. Guys, welcome to our next episode of Talk Truth. And I am excited today because I have with me a friend who goes by the name of Fabian Thomas. And you know, every week I've been saying it's multi-potentialites unite because everybody I know do, they're Jamaicans. They do 50 million things and they do them well too. Fabian, welcome to Talk Truth. Please introduce yourself.
Greetings and salutations, Mario. Greetings and salutations. And I'm sure you know we are the nation of hustlers and jack of all traders. I think
Right?
it's in our DNA. I think it's in our
It is.
DNA. It's tied to our history. It's tied to survival. It's and so Jamaicans, we are really remarkably adept at this thing of you meet somebody in one instance and then you say you do what as well, or something happens. Sometimes it's an emergency and you see the person
Right.
suddenly flying to action. You're like, how you know? And they say, oh yeah, this on the side, I do this part time. It's a remarkable thing that we have. That I think is
It's
part of our
remarkable.
brand and who we are. Yeah.
It is, it is. And we make jokes about it, but usually a Jamaican can do multiple things and do them at a level that can sustain them.
And here's the reality, Mario. That's an important life skill. And even in the time that we're in now with COVID-19, it's proving that to us.
Make me tell
Being
you.
multi-skilled and multi-leveled is, and here's one of the things I talk about as a teacher, mentor, trainer, as well with students and adults and people that I coach. It's important. A lot of people, the main job they have is not the job they love, it's not their passion.
Right.
They're
It's
good at
just,
it.
yeah.
It make the money. It's
Right.
the one that makes the most money. But when you ask them what them I like to say, in an ideal world, what would you be doing? At least half of the time, it's not the job they're in now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes not even in the industry they're in now, but somewhere in their brain, something has said, "Oh, you can't make money off that," or "I'm not good enough," or "This is the low hanging fruits." This one can make money easy. So it's a real part of our culture and who we are.
Well, you just reminded me a while ago why I could have brought you on the show to talk to you about anything. But strangely enough, Fabian and I decided that we would discuss masculinity and in
Yes.
the general context, but as Jamaican men too, from the Jamaican context. Fabian, why should my viewers feel like you're qualified to speak about this? Tell them about some of the things that you do,
Wow. Let me tell you something. Here's the thing that I find, Maria. You probably
apart from being a man.
right, and you will probably find this, but and even as you get older, that
Hmm.
sometimes we even forget the amount of things we've done in our life.
Yes,
And sometimes
absolutely.
somebody else has to say to you, like my current HOD now, Sandy Standing now, she keeps saying to us, "You are experts in this field. Act like it.
Yeah,
Write
yeah.
articles, write papers, submit abstracts." She said, "Fabian, you've been teaching this course on Bob Marley for 5 years. You've built the course. You are now a Bob Marley expert." And it's really sometimes you kind of pull back. So even with my students, I say, go back, but start your resume, start your CV. So
And
let's
start
say
looking at it.
25
Yeah.
odd years ago, it's so funny. HIV was the biggest health pandemic that this
Right.
generation had seen,
It
and I
just wasn't
and I was it was
a airborne one.
thank you, and I was knee deep, um, chest high in it, working
Hmm.
in the field. HIV forced us to have some conversations about gender, sexuality, masculinity, being a woman, feminine, all that we would not have had, and it was an
Right.
amazing life lesson. It changed my life completely.
Hmm.
It also is when I found out that I was a facilitator in my core, at my being, that training and facilitation is part of why I'm here. HIV gave me that opportunity, but
Hmm.
also now forced me to learn and have these conversations about what it means to be a man, to be a woman, what does sex and self identity mean. And that's followed me through my life as a teacher, mentor, coach, and as a man myself.
Right.
It has played into all aspects of my life, and those
And it's probably
conversations
had to force you. I find that those moments force you to look into yourself as well,
very
and
much
even
so.
figure out whatever stuff
And
how
that,
you view things,
and
how you
here
view things.
and here's a powerful thing, Mario, and I'm glad you said that, because a lot of times people in power or responsibility or authority do not allow themselves time to self assess, and it's so important.
Yeah.
What am I learning from this journey? Even though I'm the teacher, the lead, or the manager, what am I learning? How am I allowing myself to be vulnerable and open to learning and growing from this, as opposed to feeling, "Oh, I'm fixing people."
Well, usually don't realize until after. So the podcast for me did that. I came in thinking I was creating a platform for people to express their stories, which I do, but it was always a bigger learning experience for me on the other end of the episode. Every single one.
And that's for me, that's a beautiful life lesson. It's that thing
It's
of
mind blowing.
the resonance is for us, the doers, if you allow yourself to be open to that. And as you said, some people, based on their life journey, it come
Hmm.
later, it lick them
Right.
later. Yeah.
Right. So, what would you say you are? If how would you summarize your titles in terms of the different functions professionally
Wow.
and creative?
You mean
Yeah,
you
if
mean
you were to list them out,
Lord Jesus, and sometimes I've noticed that
maybe you can start
I
from
have to
the
split
things
them
that
up.
maybe you can start from the things that probably tie into this discussion first,
Right.
and then string down to the
Because
creative stuff.
what I found is that on my social media platforms, I split them up
Yeah,
because I say you can't put all of this. So for this conversation, I'd say um, social worker,
yeah,
trainer, facilitator, mentor, case manager.
yes, yeah.
Those work that I've done, and
And
then the
that's case
other.
manager from like a HIV perspective.
Yes, and let me tell you
Okay.
something, Mario, and I say this, and you will get this as a medical professional as well.
Mm-hmm.
I say it, and I continue to say, one of the biggest mistakes we made in Jamaica, because we were always ahead of the game. We
Mm-hmm.
stopped doing case management, and it
Yeah,
went more to a workshop and giving people stipend driven program. Because when we
because
were
the case
doing
management
when
is more one on one, right?
and you were also then now it was multi-level. So I knew your doctor, I knew your
Mm-hmm.
nutritionist. We all there was a circle of care where we know what's happened later is people were going to the same place for the same services sometimes, telling different stories. And again, the case management model I learned in New York when I got thrown into the deep end in working as a HIV worker in New York. Of it's a holistic view of the client. So I
Right.
know your landlord. I'm helping you get housing. I'm helping you stay on the medication. I know you need, and we all have permission from you to talk to each other.
It created better accountability and follow
Much
up
better.
and
And sometimes you help people tell their family, because they now said to you, I'm giving you permission, or I want you to be in the house when I tell my family I'm HIV positive, or when I disclose my sexuality. But we move from a kind of piecemeal, a lot of workshop driven stuff, which was important. But for a lot of the clients, it became about the stipend, the money.
hmm hmm
And then they were telling different stories in different spaces.
and they get lost in the system, and then the
Yes.
purpose of everything is
Yes,
changed, right?
quite so. And then the other side of what I do, as you said, is heavily performing arts related. So I'm an artistic director, writer, poet. Somebody with ambitions of singing, writer. Yeah. So that's I think that's a full 100 of who I am.
Right. I totally can appreciate this. All right. I think a good segue would be to read a definition. This is from the Oxford Dictionary of Masculinity. And it says qualities or attributes regarded as characteristic of men.
Yes.
And they list a few: handsome, muscled, driven. He's a prime example of masculinity.
Now you see,
Tell me how you feel about this definition. You
even the
agree?
dictionary won't tell you where the problems are.
Yeah, talk to me about it.
Because
How you feel about the definition?
suppose the man not handsome. Suppose him not muscular.
Right. Suppose
So
he's not driven.
he's not driven. So even in the where you would expect more generic, less subjective explanations like the dictionary, the gendered
They,
lens is applied.
and it's interesting that two out of those three examples were physical attributes.
There you
Interesting, eh?
go. There you go. And driven. So if you don't have no drive, so this
Then
is
you're
where
not
the
a man.
challenge happens. Especially, I'm going to say, especially a lot for men,
Hmm.
because it's so prescriptive. So
Yeah.
the idea of what a real man is, and bad man do this, and thugs not do this, and if you do this, you're this, and so there's just a lot of stuff
But
predefining you.
not to change the lens, but wouldn't you say it's the same for women as well? That there's a construct for femininity as well.
It is, but I find women get to play a little more
Right. So women have a little bit more freedom
leeway, and
within a little leeway.
mind you, some of that leeway is also very sexist and patriarchal.
Right.
But
Right. Right.
there's a
Right.
leeway, which is why gender work is so interesting and
Right.
interrelated, because sometimes it contradicts itself. Because it's weird, like some of the leeway women have is because it's men's sexist lens that says, oh yeah, you can do this because somehow it either gives me pleasure or it's non-threatening to me.
Right, right. That's interesting. I'm going to go even further to say that I think that leeway may vary depending on what culture they're coming from,
Very much so.
because I'm sure some women in other cultures would disagree with
Quite
that. But I
so.
think
Yes.
in the Western world, I do feel like women may have some more leeway in terms of their expression.
Yes. Yes.
Yet they are restricted in other regards.
Quite so. And that's the other thing
But
that
all right, so
this kind of work has taught me, Mario, is the importance of not making blanket statements.
right, right. Everything has to be very
Because
carefully worded with.
sometimes we, because it's our reality, we say, oh yeah, everybody or all of, and I said no. Even if you
Yeah,
have
no.
10 clients or 10 friends who do this, it don't mean everybody does it, or everybody
Right,
who live
right.
here, or everybody who look like this. Yeah.
Well, interesting. I well, to bring it back to the men, and I mean, I like that you brought up Jamaican references, Tugs and Badman,
Hmm.
because that is kind of more relevant to our space.
Yes.
That as a Jamaican man, you are raised to be tough, and I think I would go as far as to say a black man. But I mean, definitely in Jamaica, you grow
Yes.
up and them say, "Man, for the this,
Hmm.
you're not supposed to be a sissy. You're supposed to play
Hmm.
sports." There are just
Hmm.
so many of them that are driven into you from you come out of the womb. You must
Yes.
you know
Yes.
it's interesting. I'm grateful for my experience in terms of with my father, because I feel like he was more an example of masculinity than
Right.
than a forced, than it was
Ah.
forceful for us. So he didn't necessarily write down or dictate to us what we were to be like as men. I think he just was a good man, and we just saw that and we just used him as an example, which I loved.
And
So I'm
that's the
grateful for that.
important thing, Mario. It is the example, it is the role
Right.
modeling, it is the seeing it around you. And so this is where I think we have some challenges in Jamaica,
Right.
is that there are young men who are seeing men around them and fathers who are present, or uncles who are not necessarily fitting into the prescribed stereotype. And
Right. Right.
so for some of these boys, so some boys are almost, they have split personality because they are one type of person in one setting and
Mm-hmm.
somebody else in another. It's the mask. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
major thing we have in Jamaica. And a colleague of mine said to me, "Well, but Fabian, we have to be careful because in a lot of spaces, these young men or these boys need these masks or they'll get eaten alive."
I like that you said that because even in our conversation, when I spoke to Tammy in the beginning of this season,
Oh,
we were
Tammy.
Tammy, yeah, we were talking about identifying your truth or owning your truth,
Mm-hmm.
and we were saying that you should be honest. But then my flip side was that we spoke about the mask, and I was saying, but Tammy, the mask can be protective
Yes.
because the mask, even though some people might look at it as hypocrisy, that same mask is what prevents you from
Sometimes,
dying,
hey,
from
thank you.
from being killed and
And
eaten
that's
alive.
and that's why it's so important, Mario. We're woefully lacking in this
Yeah.
mental health support and counseling that allows people so you don't get lost in the mask, that you don't
Yeah.
lose your truth because you're hiding so much. Because sometimes when you hide for so long and create this alter ego, the
Mhm.
alter ego takes over, the other personality takes over, and you forget. It gets very murky around
Not even
who
sure
am I.
what the yeah who the
There
real
you
person is
go.
anymore.
And so it's really important to have spaces where young men and boys and anybody can talk about and acknowledge, when I'm in this setting and this setting and this setting, I'm wearing a mask that's protecting me, that's keeping me safe. But this is not who I am. This is who I
Right.
am. And that's important.
So it's somewhere between owning who you are and then having this code switch or this mask that you can utilize if you need protection.
Yes. Because
But it
here's
does. But you don't become the mask.
There you go. Because here's the
Hmm.
thing that I always think of, Mario, that gives me chills and makes my stomach churn, was the reality for our ancestors of slavery,
Hmm.
and especially when you were working in the big house
Right.
and cooking their food
The
and
house
raising their
slave.
children
Hmm.
and smiling and being in the living room when they were talking about you like you were less than dirt, but smiling.
Right. Right.
And I
Right. Right.
thought this must have been the definition of insanity. This world of existing as chattel, as mask, as empty vessel, when your husband is being beaten till his back is bleeding in the field. So as black
Right.
people, as you mentioned, we know the mask.
Right.
There's a poem that Paul Lawrence Dunbar wrote that's in my group Tribes and Covers repertoire. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile from torn and bleeding hearts. We smile and mouth with myriad subtleties. So black people have from very early on learned the importance of the mask.
Of the mask, yeah, and it translates into a lot of how we express ourselves now, but and in both ways, in terms of projecting that mask more,
Very
but
much so.
also the anger and the animosity and the rebellion.
Very much so. 'Cause I don't know if you
you know
remember recently, and I went on social media and supported him, Conscience. So I'm
Okay,
not a fan
right.
of Conscience.
Which one are the topics now? Because he's
So
had a
when
few.
he had I'm gonna call it the meltdown recently, I guess some marriage relational issue.
Relationship thing, right, that he
Yes.
posted, right,
And he posted this very long raw rant.
which created an imagery that him and his wife were breaking up, but in the end
She
they weren't. She rebutted to say that this wasn't
which was
breakup.
which was interesting. So again, so here's what it did for me.
But we're talking about, yeah. Go ahead.
I said, because I said, and I prefaced my comments on social media by saying I have serious issues with Conscience as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's brilliant. I think he's talented, and the musicality, the production is awesome. But he has the
Mm-hmm.
commitment to carelessness. He's decided that the conscious thing now work and now sell, which is fine. I
Right.
said, but this very emotional, very vulnerable rant online, and also the way people were coming at him. And I'm like, make the youth thrive. If he needs to spill him guts right now, make him do that. We're not in it. We don't know the truth of it. But this very real and raw emotional, upheaval on online. I said, let's just treat it with some grace and some respect.
Well, this is the tricky part,
And we
Fabian,
should,
and that's
yeah,
yeah. The online space is one that you really
yes,
aren't certain how real things are sometimes.
right,
And but all right, assuming it was real, I'd agree with you. I think he's quite articulate. He's a smart guy,
right,
and what he expresses is he tends to have very raw expressions on social
right.
media, and
But,
he's like that. He
but
seems to be a candid
when
person.
she rebutted it, I thought, okay, so at very bottom, this is probably could be a mental health issue.
I
Could
don't
be a
know. Yeah,
could be a but something triggered this. That is usually for men not allowed. You don't
right.
sound
Triggered
out like that. You don't
the outpouring. Yeah,
outpour. I remember when Vegas had that serious several meltdowns in interviews just bawling, and
he's had
people
a
just
few
like,
too. Yeah,
what go on here, sir? What is wrong with this? And this with him with Vegas was particularly powerful is in a context when I'm sure Vegas is no angel. But
right,
even men who give their women or their partner bun repeatedly can't take bun.
right.
And even in that, we've had the killings and murders in Jamaica because something about this brand of Jamaican masculinity where I get to do and say whatever I want to you, and you belong to me, and you need to do what I tell you. And if you don't, I'm either gonna physically abuse you or kill you or kill our children probably,
And then kill themselves sometimes.
and then kill themselves because of this lack of the emotional intelligence and the emotional vocabulary to express pain or
But
to acknowledge that I'm in pain.
I love that we ended up here because we tie right back to again mental health and
Hmm.
masculinity. So
Yes.
so do you feel like a lot of these expressions are just unhealthy ways of not being able, in other words, what am I trying to say is that to be a man is X. And anything that goes against me being X, I have to
Right.
counter it with Y.
There you go. And that's the challenge. It's
So
this
the issue isn't that we
binary.
want to do these things, right? We don't necessarily want to do these things, but I have to prove
It's
myself.
thank you. It's the binary. And a lot of our boys,
Hmm.
I'm going to say the majority of our boys are stuck in that matrix. And when I do work with young men and boys and youth with mentor, it comes out really powerfully.
How do
There's
they
this
express?
code. Let me tell you, there is a lot. So here's the thing: our children are in trauma.
Hmm.
Jamaica in trauma, but we are going like that in trauma.
Recurrent trauma, to, repeated
Yes,
trauma.
Mario, when you deal with these kids from basic school upward,
Hmm.
the level of aggression, the
Yeah,
violence, the
yeah,
acting out, they can't sit still, they can't concentrate, the unkind things they say to each other on a whim,
comfortably, yeah,
comfortably. And when you say
disturbing.
why, yes, it is disturbing. And I'm talking about from 5 years old upward. When you get to some of the older ages, and I find it's even important with the younger ones to create spaces for dialogue and conversation that may not look like me talking at you. We might be using, and we need this, because I gather there's maybe two trained drama therapists in Jamaica, one of
Right.
whom is a good sister of mine. We
Yeah,
need to be using art therapy, music therapy, drama therapy, so people can draw out, act out, sing out, as opposed to sitting and talking. For some people, that's hard. But when you do a
right.
game or an activity and then you process it, as opposed to affixing you, which is why a lot of, in Jamaica, we're not taught to sit and talk things out. We're getting better at it. But a lot of times, people who are supposed to be protecting people don't trust because,
Yeah.
in a lot
So
of,
people want an alternative route of
thank
expression because
you.
talking already tied to informal culture one.
I thank
And
you.
then two,
Thank you.
outside of informal culture, there is we're just a creative people. So I think
Thank
using the
you.
arts is just a great way to get across
And
to the youth.
so important.
Well, it's funny. There's some psychological things that I've seen. When I was in medical school, we had an experiment to do where the class was told to draw like a tree with a root.
Hmm.
And the clinical psychologist would then walk around and look at the trees.
Hmm.
But apparently, certain things signified certain things. I don't know how accurate these studies are. I don't remember the
Hmm.
numbers are. But like if you drew a tree and it had a big root and you drew the hole in it. Like I always link this hole to like something you'd see on Winnie the Pooh.
Hmm.
Apparently, that hole signified that you were abused,
Or
or
could,
it signified
or
some,
could.
yeah, that you were
Yes.
possibly
Yeah,
exposed to
man.
some abuse. And they had many other trees in
And
these
there's
textbooks
and
that
there's
kind of show that these kids would draw these holes in
and,
the tree
and there's
root.
studies that show and prove this. Like, so let's say you ask children to draw a picture of their home or their family,
Right.
and the mother is never in the picture.
Right,
That's
right,
not
right.
accidental.
It's a subconscious representation of what the unit looks
Or
like.
if the father is always scowling in the picture, that's not accidental. This
Right.
is
So
how the
there's true.
child is perceiving this person.
Mm-hmm. And then that's how you identify it, because you may not have
Yeah.
picked it up before.
And then sometimes even when I do coaching with couples,
Mm-hmm.
it's a really powerful thing when you get couples to either to act as each other,
Yeah.
because they portray their partner the way they see them and hear them. And 9 times out of 10, it's an exaggerated, pointed, caricature, but it tells you how
How they
they
feel.
perceive their partner. So
Right.
the Charlie Brown cartoon, wah, 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 where all the adults sound like that.
Right. That's all you hear.
That's
You
all the
can see it
child hears. That's
in
all the child
picture,
hears. Wah,
right?
wah, 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 wah. That's not what you're saying, but that's what the child is hearing. So that kind of therapy, art, those kind of therapies, people are writing songs and poems. I worked in a school. There's a young man who was suicidal, and
Yeah.
when how one of his friends got me to help him, and I just want to pause right now and hope that he's alive and
Yes.
healthier. Wherever
Yes,
you
I hope
are,
so
wherever
too.
you are, I speak it and hope that you have healed.
Uh-huh.
She brought me some of his poetry, and let's say she brought me 10 pages of poetry. Mario, after the fourth page, I had to put it down.
It's heavy.
Heavy. I mean, I
Yeah.
talk about gargoyle and wing things coming and rending his flesh and da 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 da.
Dark.
And his and even though and he was cutting himself, he was, even though he was having these outwardly negative things, I am so sure that writing that poetry kept him alive and kept him a little saner, because he was getting it
Right.
out. He was
Right.
putting
Right.
it
He
out
was
on paper, and he had
able
to
to
hide
do.
because he didn't want anybody. So he had shared it with her, and then she said to him, "Boy, I really think some other people need to see this."
And
And he's
yeah,
like,
but
"No."
she was really trying
And
to
then she
protect him.
said, "Can I show it to Mr. Thomas?" And he said yes. And I didn't know him because I didn't teach him.
But
I'd
he knew
heard
you.
of him, and she said yes. And that's how I got to meet him and now have one-on-ones with him and ting, 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 ting. And he needed help. And I said that to him, I said, "I'm going to be straight up with you. You need more help than I can give you. Where you are in this thing that you're wrestling with, this is bigger than me."
I want to come back to some more of the negative things before we get to the positive things. But
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, where do you find this strength and fortitude to continue to help? What drives you?
Boy, I think,
What drives you and keeps you up? Because it can be heavy. I'm a doctor, so I
yes,
deal with a lot
yes,
of expressions of problems and
yes.
emotions, and sometimes it's a lot you have to detach. What keeps you going?
Here's one of the things I firmly believe, Mario. What is feel cannot be unfeel.
Mm-hmm.
And when all of us come to do our work, or some of us have come to do many works, and I think whether you want to call it Holy Spirit, ancestors, Mother, Father, God, Jah, Rastafari, Yahweh, any of the names, I think if we get sent and we were brought here to do our work, Spirit gonna give us what we need to push through, even when it weighs us down, even when we get
Right.
tired, even when we want to go in a corner and ball. You're gonna, if it's really for you, you're gonna come back to it. But that's why self-care and care for caregivers is crucial.
Right.
So I try to I ball me at the drop of a
Sometimes.
pin.
Right.
The
Because you
commercials with me
allow
ball.
you allow your emotions to flow through you. You don't block them.
And here's what happens sometimes, and I say this to people all the time, and I say this to boys and young men. So let's say I'm watching a movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And ostensibly I start crying because of something in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But long after the scene done or the movie done, me still a ball. I'm crying out something else. And I let myself cry till me done. So I always tell people, stop saying to people, stop crying now. Or stop
but
asking boys where you cry for. Make them cry.
but crying is counter to
Thank,
masculinity. So
thank you.
when did you actually embrace that ability to tap into that? Because you have to be comfortable enough to do it.
I think I just always did. I just did
You
not
always
let
did.
people
Hmm.
stop me. And even when they laughed and found it strange, I just knew this is who I am.
Yeah. Well, the sad part is that some of these ideals of masculinity get burnt into us. I mean, I'm not afraid to cry now. And I'm like you, if I see something in a movie that makes me cry, I cry. But at the same time, I don't cry a lot.
Hmm.
And I think it still ties to my masculinity in
Yeah.
terms of crying is a sign of weakness. But
Yes.
but I don't know if it ties into it so much as me being a man. I think it's just me being strong. So,
Yes.
but that may tie into me being a man too.
Well,
But I feel in my personality type, I
yeah.
would prefer not to cry
Yeah.
over everything.
Mario, I bust a ball in Panama on a plane one time.
In a
A
play or
plane,
in a plane.
on a plane to
Oh
England,
wow.
to London.
Yeah.
So it was a long flight.
Right.
And there's certain movies that I know, if you can afford to watch them in public, because if you go Color
You go
Purple,
in
which is my
trigger.
favorite movie of all time.
Right.
Color Purple, I fall out at several different places, but there's also a movie called Pay It Forward.
Right. That's Will Smith, right?
No man, Pay It Forward is Haley Joe Osment and Helen, it's set in a
I
school
saw
with a
it.
little
It's
boy.
an excellent movie. Yeah, I
Let me
saw
tell you
Pit Forward.
something.
I mixed it
I
up
mean,
with
no,
the other Will Smith one.
I know there's a scene that but we say, oh no, man, they have to find, we go watch it, and Mario, a ball, and the man beside me, him shift and him turn,
I'm
and
uncomfortable.
then he gave me his kerchief. Said, I think you need this, and me take a kerchief. And when we done, he said, can I say something to you? And I said, yes. He said, I envy you. And I said,
Wow.
why? He said, I wish I could do what you just did.
Wow. And he knew you were crying
And
from the
so,
movie because
yeah,
you
man,
were.
and then we had this amazingly beautiful and vulnerable conversation because he just talked about carrying things and feeling the need that as a man, you have to, and being raised in a home where he wasn't allowed to express, and
Yeah.
now struggling in his life as an adult male, getting older, with expressing and being authentic in his feelings. And let me
It's
tell you,
true.
it's one of those conversations with a stranger that I've caught as a gift. And when we were leaving, because by the time the flight done, me and him a party.
Right. Right. And your brethren, no.
And when we're leaving, he said to me, I want to say thank you, because he said, not only did you just do that open expression of who you are, but he said, you're obviously, I was meant to sit beside you
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
carried this heaviness on the plane with me that I've been carrying for a while. He said, it's not there now. And he said, you haven't magically given me all the answers, but this conversation with you, I know has changed my life.
Yeah, you unlocked a
And
piece
I
of him
just
that he
thought,
had lost.
there are no accidents.
No accidents and
Yeah.
wonderful things happen on planes
Yes.
and just randomly in life.
Yes.
We have
Indeed.
to really be open to receiving it. Eh?
Indeed.
Well, I wanted to know where in Jamaica were you raised?
Well, so I was born in England,
Mm.
and my parents came back to Jamaica when I was 7. And
Okay,
I
so you were
in
there for
Kingston.
a while.
Yeah, man.
Mm-hmm.
Kingston, Jamaica.
Okay, cool. And would you say that your parents had strong constructs of masculinity that you had to abide by, or what was
I
your
think
childhood like?
they did. They did. I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, you're like yes, you're gonna say yes.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think I struggled with them to a point, and
Mm-hmm.
then was just mean because even when they said, oh, so and so, what are you doing, so and so and so, me just do it anyway, or do it a little
Right,
quieter.
right. You just decided it was going to happen,
Yeah,
whether they liked it
and
or
then
not.
when I got older, it was just like, okay, this is who I am, this is who I'm expressing, so deal with it.
Yeah,
So there's a point in my life where I did not get along with my father at all. In fact, I just kind of shut down because my father was the type of man where if you did not agree with him, you were clearly an idiot, and he would tell you that. So
yeah.
my solution was everything he asked me or said to me, my response was, I don't know.
Ah,
And then after months, he said, "No, you never know anything yet." And I'm like, "Well, Daddy, what's the point of knowing or having an opinion? Because if it differs from yours, you're gonna tell me I'm an idiot." I mean, I'm happy to say no. Me and my dad are good, but it took years of us working through our issues, and then of pushing through and accepting the little olive branches he was able to. Because sometimes we want to remake our parents or remake people into who we want them to be, But people
Yeah, and
can
we
only be who they actually are.
right, and we forget that they're also going through a journey themselves.
There you go. And when they make a little progress, love them up and embrace it. So me and my dad are good now. And a lot of boys express to me when I work with them as a mentor or just as a like a father figure, either a lament about not having their father present or the difficulty of working through issues with their fathers, but also their mothers. Here's the thing that we don't talk about a lot, Mario.
But the role of women in masculinity, because they play a
Let
huge role in
me
it.
tell you something. It is alarming and disturbing the amount of rage, anger, and aggression that boys have towards their mothers,
Yeah.
matriarch, because of the things that are said to them, the way
Mm-hmm.
they're treated, the
Mm-hmm.
emasculation, even the school system. And so, as somebody who works in the school system as well, I see it. A lot of the female teachers, the way they speak to the boys is "Ah!" Immediately, no matter what the boy's doing.
Right.
That's the tone. And don't let me grant, I get it. The school system, that's a whole other show. It is a
Yeah.
it's a mess. But the
Yeah.
boys, if every other or 95% of the female teachers that you engage are speaking to you like that,
Then you start
no
to feel like
matter,
that's how.
there
Mm-hmm.
you go. And then when you hear some of the things that, even when you look around the street, and I believe a lot of our men carry this rage with them into adulthood, and we're seeing it in these really toxic and deadly relationships all
Well,
around us.
I'm going to add to what you said on the negative end that I work in the government system at Children's Hospital, and it's interesting how naturally a lot of the women propagate the hypermasculinity.
Mm-hmm.
And even when the kids can barely even speak or walk, they are creating these constructs around the penis and the foreskin
Yes.
and all sort of little something, like around
Yes.
sexuality. And I'm like, these kids don't
Yes.
even have the brain space to even
Yes.
conceptualize sex and sexuality, but we're already
Already.
preparing
The
them.
script, yes.
We're already creating a
Because
script for
here's, I
them.
believe, one of the biggest issues Jamaica has. If we have a top five things of issues, parenting is number two.
Okay. Parent education,
And
parenting, religion,
crime,
crime,
corruption, religion. Yeah,
corruption. Right, the bad things,
parenting
crime,
is a
corruption, parenting.
major issue.
Yeah.
Because when you hear, when the high schools I've taught in or when I've dealt with an educational system,
Hmm.
many times when you meet the parents or the guardians, you kind of go,
Okay, this
oh,
makes sense
you
now.
understand the child.
Right, and you can't blame the child
Or
for it.
sometimes the version of the child that I know, the parents do not know.
Right,
Because some
right.
kids act out. So when they come at school, some kids can't match answer at home, especially some boys. But you see when them come at school, them leg
And I
up.
feel and I feel there and there's the flip side to where I feel school is also a positive place for them to express.
Many students, it is a
Right.
positive and sometimes safer space.
Especially spaces like Arden that have such wonderful creative programs
Yes,
and
yes.
talented kids, yeah.
A lot of school, a
We
lot
never
of
go Arden, but me have to big them up.
yeah,
'Cause
man, yeah, man.
them
Yeah, Arden and I said that recently that Arden is one of those schools that I think the study should be done. I think one of the major things is that to see how Arden has impacted the performing arts landscape in this country.
right.
And also, Arden, I think, should be the first experiment of a performing arts high school in Jamaica.
I see.
I
I
think
would
I
agree.
think they're the only high school who are already have the infrastructure for
To
that to
to to
happen.
kind of
To
be
say,
right,
make we do
right,
an
right,
experiment for a year of
right. Cause they
having
have the
a performing arts high
high
school
school, cause
curriculum.
they have the space that
They do
supports it.
when they have the drama room, the dance room, the da da da. Da. And
Before
interestingly,
you
how this
Mhm,
ties to masculinity. I
mhm.
taught at Ade
Right,
for over a year, and I have to say there was a different kind of masculinity at Ade.
right.
There
Wait,
was lots more spaces and allowances for difference
I am going
and
to. I want you to
diversity.
finish. Yeah, I want you to finish that statement because my next question is going to be if you think that that is because it's a co-ed school.
No, I don't think it's just because it's a co-ed school. Because in other co-ed schools that I've been to, it's not. It's different.
It's different. Okay.
I think it's the culture of the school. I think it is the fact that they have 45 co-curricular clubs. So the
Right. So you
kids
think it has
get
to
different
do
expressions and
with a lot of
people find
extracurricular?
things where they can feel complete, where they can express themselves. I think the students show up differently for their friends and the way they love and hold on to each other. And I think the pockets of nurturing and mentorship that was there, especially when I was there and that preceded me, has made a big difference. It's something that's in the culture of the school that I really hope they hold on to for as long as the school exists, because it
Yeah.
makes a major difference.
And props to those who created the culture, maintain the
Very much
culture, and,
so.
and and also having the insight to bring new people into that culture, and they
Yes.
fit and they fit.
And don't get me wrong, it's not perfect, because nowhere
It's
is
not perfect.
perfect.
Never,
But
never
there's
perfect.
something, and I even said it to the principal when I was there. I said to her, there is a grace in this school that sometimes I don't even think you as a principal or the board or the staff understand. There's magic happening here that we sometimes overlook.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right. I
yeah,
mean, but I would want to add to that. I think that, I mean, I went to Campion, which was a different energy, but co-educational institutions really do have an effect on the expression of masculinity.
yes, oh
And
yes,
and that's because having girls around you from first form to sixth form, that's a whole 7 years of teenage life
yes.
around girls, really changes how you treat women, how you
And,
perceive women, because you really are experiencing them real time.
and let me tell you something, Mario, as you mentioned that, that's really powerful. The the resentment that a lot of boys who are in all boys schools have about being in an all boys school
Hmm.
is palpable.
Wow. But some of them
They,
like it.
but a
But
lot of
which
them
element of
don't.
resentment?
But the thing is, some of them, and the flip side is the distraction, because
Right, right, right,
when the
right. No,
hormones
and that
kick in,
no
but a
man.
lot of the boys resent being in an all boys school because they have done the girl around for look pan and da, 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 da. So there's an angst and anger for some of them about being in an all boys school and what that
It's funny.
means.
It literally goes both ways because I think
Yes,
having the girls present are a distraction, and I think it can allow you to enter into physical and sexual and intimate
yes,
spaces earlier because it's there.
yes. But it also
But
is a
also
good
having them around, yeah, it
thank you.
kind
It's
of
a
make you
lesson. It's
understand.
a
It's a
life
lesson.
lesson. Yes.
You don't end up feeling so desperate to seek it out because you have it.
Yes, and then also like when if you go into a tertiary space or work, you've
Yeah, man.
had
This is
7 years of dealing
of
with
spaces with
female
women.
energy and with women. It's
Yeah,
true. Yeah, it's
and it
true.
helps. It helps.
It's
Trust me,
very
it really
true.
helps.
Yeah.
I wanted to speak a bit about. We were hitting a lot of the negative things that masculinity, toxic masculinity can cause.
Yeah.
Murdering partners, just how we express the violence, the aggression. I wanted to touch on sexuality, and because a lot of Caribbean black men tend to women worry about them being on the down low.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm going to see how I can coin this well, but long and short, what I'm really trying to say is if men have same sex attractions that exist within them,
Mm-hmm.
living in a space that is not allowing them to express it, do you
Mm-hmm.
feel a lot of men make decisions that they really don't want to make? Getting married, having children that they don't really need to have. How you feel about that expression of masculinity to protect themselves again? Like a mask, it's more of the mask,
Yeah.
but in a more tangible way.
It's so I have two extreme responses. One is anger and annoyance, and the other is it's heartbreaking.
And
It's
I'm going to have
heart
another response. I'm going to add to that.
it's
So
heartbreaking because
anger and annoyance and heartbreaking.
and it's anger and annoyance at the I guess as we say the system, the culture that creates the need for that kind of duplicity and
Right.
dishonesty. And when I was younger, it was anger and annoyance at these weak men who need to do this. Now that
Yeah.
I'm older and I understand people's lives and experiences are different and how they see themselves and what they see as possible is different, it's also heartbreaking because you're living a lie, you're living somebody else's script, but you
Yeah.
also now are entangling somebody else's life in your lie, somebody who is hopefully loves you and is committed to you and is
And
committed
who
to this
sometimes,
version of you that you present
right, and who may not know about the other version
at all, sometimes don't
at
have a
all sometimes. Yeah.
clue.
Mm.
And so that saddens me because it is almost I've been lost for words to comfort or console someone who has found out that these how many years I've invested or how many has been together when I've loved you and thought this is who you are, and I now find out that you had this whole other life or lives What does that mean? Who am I? What yes, it's really, it's heartbreaking when somebody
Fabian,
is confronted with that.
I don't think you could have expressed that any better. And I do share your sentiment in that I dislike hypocrisy and lies.
Yeah.
So that part saddens me. And when it leads to entangling the life of someone else
Yes.
who is unaware,
Yeah.
it's unfair to them and it's just not cool. but
Eh,
but me being the Libra I'm going to speak on a spectrum. I do understand as well that if you believe, me and Karen Carpenter spoke about sexual fluidity. If you
yeah.
believe in fluidity, then it's not black or white. So there may be some people who fall very close to that middle line who may have some attraction in one end,
Yes.
but they
Oh,
also
yeah,
have some
definitely.
attraction on another end, and
Definitely.
they can make a choice that they want to choose.
Right.
And I think that supports the other party answer where you're like, it's everybody's
Yes.
own life, they can do what they want to do.
Right.
I just hope people are transparent and honest when they
Yeah.
make those decisions, you know,
And
and
I
that
know
everybody
people.
know
I
what
know
going.
people who have done that. There's somebody who I know really really well who he decided that he was not going to explore the same sex part of his identity, and he's
Right, because it was more important to
happily
him to have
married with
a
three
family.
kids, but he's
Right,
not denying what he feel, but he
right,
decided.
right,
And he
right.
also said that, so I asked him, I said, why? And he said, to be honest with you, I believe that if I pursue it, it will consume me.
Okay,
And
right.
those
That
were
was
his
his.
words.
Right,
But
right,
then
right,
the
right.
other, and I say to people, the other thing, and I think I was probably first exposed to this in New York when I lived in New York, but I've seen and experienced it in Jamaica as well, where people make really evolved and nuanced decisions about
I was gonna say it's
relationships
2020
when
now,
they
and
know who they're dating.
yeah,
So
man,
people
it's a
date people.
different.
I know you're bisexual. I know you're pansexual, or we're having an open relationship. So I say to people, I said, take a risk if you can trust the person, if you really are committed to them, and you want to actively live the full parts of your identity. Be real. If the person said no, then they weren't for you. But I
Yeah,
know several people who are in relationships or marriages where one partner is bisexual and they know, and there's an understanding, like, and they have norms and rules and structure around it. So even that around men being able to navigate the space around whether it is a non-binary or non-cis expression of their identity, whether
yeah.
they're on a spectrum, are you the breadwinner? Are you making the most money in the family? That kind of thing. A lot of men still struggle with that around. Am I really a man if I'm not hitting these particular marks?
Right, there are these check boxes that they feel like if they're not
Yes.
hitting it.
Yes.
But I like what you said again too. It's 2020, and not that these things never existed for years, but I feel like with social media, TV, and just our avenues for expression,
Yes.
the conversations are more open, and I think people do have more structured
Definitely.
relationships with rules. And I think at the end of the day, it still comes back down to the basic things, which is communication, respect,
Yes.
and at the end of the day, once you obey those, and really commitment, as you said, because at the end of the day, you choose, you can just choose.
There you go.
Most people are
Recently,
committed, choose to be with this
big,
friend, their best friend, whoever the
thank
best
you.
friend is.
Thank you.
That you choose and you stay
Yep.
and you make it work.
Recently married a young man in a mentorship program that I'm leading for British Council. He asked, "Sir, what does it mean to be a real man?" And this comes up
Hmm.
because I asked him to write down issues, and I mentored Calabar as well, and something about being a real man or being a successful man. And I always bring the conversation back to, but are you a good man? And what does that
Right.
mean? Are
Is
you
is
honest?
masculinity and being okay, you're answering the question
Thank
right
you.
now.
I
So I'm
said,
saying, is
is
masculinity and being a man the same thing?
right. So I said, it's about honesty and integrity and loyalty and true. I said, are you true to yourself? Are you honest with yourself? Do you do good? Are you kind to people? Are you honest? I said, for me, that's more important. I said that's for me, that is realness,
Hmm.
as opposed to, oh, I'm making X amount of money and I drive in a big car, I have enough gal in a bungle, and yeah. So it's interesting because most of them tell you what's coming at them is these check boxes of one heap of gal and no gal can chat to you, and
Hmm.
you get several youths, and I said to them, get them from where they shop.
Price map, me say.
As opposed to
Get a youth.
engage in an act with somebody, girl child, and bring forth a life. You get a youth, but there's this detachment. But then the other side of it, Mary, that I see all the time is the young men who are pining and sometimes crying because they're being denied access to their children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because the mothers get listened to in court, and sometimes the mother vex and say, "Oh, I'm going to use the child
To
as a
cut off
weapon
this
again to cut
relationship.
off." But
Mm-hmm.
we don't tell those men stories. We don't tell the young men
Right,
stories who
right.
are weeping because they want to see their children, they want to be
And
part of the
those
life, but they're
children
being denied.
get a different story growing up as well too.
And that's something the young man tell us when they hear some of the things that the mothers and the family say
Are
about their
feeding.
father,
Yeah.
or the child who does us, you go visit, you're sent to spy, see what in the house, who over there. So the
Yeah,
child
that
now feels
story. It's
guilty because they been
right.
sent like a spy. Who was over there? What them have? What must say about me? And I'm like,
The
adults, grown folks, don't do that. Don't do
Yeah, you're right.
that.
You're right. The story of that man who may not be in the majority, but it is hardly told that
It's
there are
hardly,
some men
hardly
who
told.
want to be good fathers or want to be present, but they're not
Hmm.
allowed to be for various reasons.
And the other thing I tell the people all the time, Mario, is not to make excuses for the men. There are some fathers who should be absent
Yeah, right.
because they're a negative, in fact, toxic influence.
Sperm
Because if your
donors.
child is going to be seeing you beating and thumping your wife or girlfriend every night, you should not be present.
Right,
Or if you're going to
right,
be abusing the child, so some men are just they're sperm donors.
right.
But
They've
I think
lost
when you
their right.
go back, we have a lot of broken men, and we're
Yeah.
raising a lot of broken, damaged people who are sometimes they feel that they're broken, but they don't know how to fix it, or the brokenness becomes their norm and almost like a crutch.
Well, this brings me to my last question for you, Fabian, and that is, especially as a mentor, how do you think as a nation or even on a one-on-one basis, how can we help our men transform into being less broken, more adjusted? Where do we start?
Well, Mario, we need a lot more access to spaces of safety
Yeah.
where people can, from whatever spectrum of help they need. So I'm saying, in schools, in church, whatever, non-judgmental spaces of play therapy, art therapy, journaling, a conversation to trained experts, and that's something that is woefully lacking in Jamaica. Your average person, even middle class people, can't afford therapy. What it
Right.
costs.
And that's just to get to the root of the problem to
Thank
try and
you.
assist them.
Thank
But
you.
what about a whole cultural overhaul that
That is
takes
the
like what,
thank you.
decades?
That's what we need. And
And
one of
how
the
do you do
things,
that?
and we feel bad for burden Mr. All this right now with COVID-19, but it's
Hmm.
something that we need. We need some national interventions.
Yeah.
You remember back in the day, and I keep saying to people the fact that even now remember the things. Breast is best. Two is better than too many. There are these
Right.
national campaigns that are etched in our consciousness. We
Yeah.
need some more of those to look
But
at
geared.
things geared at specifically, toxic masculinity, healthier gender relationships, domestic
Hmm.
violence, and mental health. We
Yeah.
need some national interventions that do a kind of cultural shift. Like I love the way that we said social and physical distancing don't mean it to some people. Tana your yard,
Right. Right.
Jamaicanize it. Take the concept and Jamaicanize it. I
And
think
make
we
it relevant
need
to the
those
space. Yeah.
things, and whether it's funding, who can do it for free contributions, we need to create these spaces and access to people and individuals and programs that can start to help with this. The schools need it. I mean, one of the challenges, and I'm just going to first big up all the caregivers in schools, guidance counselors, and stuff. But sadly, there's such a lack of trust because of the problem of confidentiality. So kids tell you as soon as they leave the office, other staff know what
Yeah.
they
It
talk
goes
to them.
goes to
Or
the staff
or
room. Yeah.
the parent or guardian who the child tell you is abusing them is them you call to tell that the child says so because
Right.
you don't believe
And
the child. We're not believing the children. Your mother would never do that. Your father would never do that. And so, especially if they're boys, the boys are even less likely to believe, and they're also less likely to disclose. Because
right.
I'm supposed to be a man, I'm supposed to be strong. So it's that healthcare, that care seeking behavior that we need to get into inculcating our boys that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say to somebody, I feel scared, I feel nervous, I feel sad. So we need some major cultural shifts and then some psychosocial access to broaden that. You know
And as you
what?
say, we need big more spaces, and I mean, we have to shift the culture of mental health in which we're doing, but
Yes,
in a larger way,
yeah,
so
and
that
what?
people can feel like, oh, I don't feel well, let me go talk.
Yes, and what we can do now immediately, Mario, is in our
Mm-hmm.
own spaces and spheres of influence, being a little more patient,
Yeah,
having different kinds of conversations with young boys and young men, referring them for help, but be in our walk, in our individual walks, being someone who's not re-traumatizing people,
yeah.
but is shining a little light, a little kindness, and helping. And the reality is, when you do that, you may draw more people. And some people say, we can't take it.
Exactly, exactly. Oh boy. Wow, Fabian, it really is always a pleasure talking to you because you're a man with such a breadth and scope of exposures and information and just a really beautiful perspective on life and how you look at the world. I would say you're an empath, you're a humanitarian, you're a bag of other things as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, Thank you for being on the show. And before we end, please tell people how they can find you. That's if you want them find you.
Oh, yes. And blessings to you, to Mario. I'm so proud of you.
Thank
I'm
you.
so proud of you because one thing I always say, you were always very clear in your authentic truth of, I am a doctor, but I'm also an artist.
Right.
And so, yes, I'm going to sing. I'm going to put on show. I'm going to do an album because that's what I want. That's what I'm led to do. And then now you have the talk show and blessings because things may come to you because you're standing in your truth
I
and
appreciate that.
you're taking your risk and doing your thing. So people can reach me. I'm on IG as Fabian dot M dot Thomas. That's my life coaching um page. And I also have the Fabian dot M dot Thomas on Facebook as well. Life coach, motivational speaker. They can also find me on Tribes and Co is my performing arts group.
Tribe
Um,
Sankofa,
yeah,
and
and
that's
we're
Tribe,
right?
Sankofa, Sankofa,
Sankofa on
right,
IG and on YouTube and Facebook. And then I
right.
just started a new show, Mario, which you're going to be a guest on. You're on my list called Fabian
Yay,
Say. I have a YouTube show called Fabian Say, and
right.
it's a bag of things of that in my head that come out of my mouth. That's the description of the show, and
Right.
I'm really excited about that. And that's on YouTube.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, man.
And in terms of life coaching, what kind of problems can people reach out to you for? Anything at all?
But
You have
anything
any
at all, and what I do is I do an initial meet
assessment?
assessment, and then if it's
Hmm.
something that's not in my purview, I refer to people.
Right, but you're open to hearing what the
Yeah,
issue might be,
man.
and then
Yes. So I've dealt with from mental health issues, violence, aggression, couples therapy, coaching students on concentration on being more creative, a range of
mhm.
things. As you said, as varied as I am, that's some of the issues I dealt with.
No,
But I
exactly,
believe in
exactly.
being real and transparent. If this is not in my area of expertise where I can help you, I'm going to pass you on to a colleague of mine. And sometimes I do research to get people to the right person because I think that's important. It's not about, oh, come to me because I'm the be all and end all rubbish.
No, it's about the right
Sometimes
fit,
I'm a
right?
conduit to help you get to the help that you need.
Oh, tell me, I know all about it.
Yeah.
Fabian, thank you so much for being on
Oh,
Talk
my
Show.
pleasure. Blessings.
It was a
Blessings,
great
Mario.
conversation, and have a wonderful day, and we will talk.
Same to you. Blessings.
You guys just listened to episode number 35 with Fabian Thomas. Such a really cool conversation with a cool cat. And I mean, someone who you can tell, you can really truly tell that he is truly comfortable with where he is as a man. And I couldn't think of anybody better to have that conversation with. And to the men who do not feel or who maybe don't even know that they're not doing things in a positive light, I really hope you can hear this podcast and that the perspectives will help you to approach many of your situations differently. And to the men who think that they're doing a great job of being men, I pray for you to continue to do that and to evolve into even better men if that's possible. Before we take it out, before we cut out today, let me just read a review. We have one that is titled Truth Make for Talk. I really enjoy the openness that we get from the guests on a weekly basis, as well as Mario's spontaneity as the host. Yes, there are prepared questions, but what makes this show relatable and digestible is Mario's active listening. I really do feel like I'm listening to a real conversation unfold as opposed to a scripted rush to get through questions. Real people attacking the topic from real angles and being truthful, even if it makes them vulnerable. Keep giving us great content. We love it. We got that review a couple days ago on Apple Podcasts, and it came from I Am Virch. Thank you so much for listening. I always give thanks. You also did a post on social media, which we saw and reposted. Trust me, I appreciate it. Guys, I tend to not like to go into the statistics of the podcast, but they really vary from week to week depending on what's going on. We had up to 100 and something subscribers, but sometimes subscriber counts are not accurate, so they dip back down. So right now I'm seeing 72 subscribers, and I find that really hard to believe given that I know that over 300 people are taking in this podcast. So if you haven't subscribed, please do. And I'm just going to stop talking right now and do my outro, which basically is telling you to show us some love by subscribing, rating, and reviewing this podcast in iTunes. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter. On Instagram, we're at talk.truthja, and follow me as well on Instagram at Mario Evon. The hashtag is talktruthja or Talk Truth with Me, which is TT, little w, capital ME, TTME. And of course, the episodes can be found at our website, talktruthja.com, or email talktruthja@gmail.com. And in the show notes, you can find a form if you want to be a guest. That's all the information I'm going to give you guys. Thank you for your support always. And again, follow, subscribe, comment, review. Just show the love. Trust me. I don't want to know that. I don't want to feel like I'm out here talking to myself, even though I know I'm not. Blessed love, guys. Stay safe until next time. Big up.